3,000 years ago, the average human brain was larger than yours. Not by a little, by a meaningful amount. The human brain has been shrinking for millennia, and the most unsettling part is not the shrinking itself. It is what scientists think is causing it. For most of human history, the brain grew. It expanded steadily over 2 million years, from the walnut-sized brain of our earliest ancestors to the 3-pound organ sitting in your skull right now. That growth built everything: language, tools, fire, civilization, art, the ability to read these words, and then, around 3,000 years ago, it stopped and reversed. Researcher David Geary of the University of Missouri has spent years studying this phenomenon. His findings are stark. The human brain has lost roughly 17 cubic centimeters of volume since the Holocene period began. That is about the size of a golf ball, and it has been shrinking faster in the last few hundred years than at any point in the previous 20,000. So what happened? The leading theory is not what you would expect. It is not disease. It is not pollution. It is not screens or processed food or modern laziness. The leading theory is that civilization itself is making our brains smaller. Here is how. For 2 million years, the human brain was under constant selection pressure. Every single day, your ancestors had to solve complex problems just to survive. Where is the water? Which plants are safe? How do I track this animal? How do I read the weather? How do I navigate back to camp? The individuals whose brains were best at solving those problems lived longer, reproduced more, and passed those brain structures on to their children. Natural selection was, in effect, a daily intelligence test, and only the sharpest minds passed. Then agriculture arrived, and everything changed. When humans stopped hunting and started farming, the cognitive demands of daily life dropped dramatically. You no longer needed to track animals across vast landscapes. You no longer needed to memorize hundreds of edible plant species. You no longer needed to navigate by stars. You needed to tend a field, season after season, the same field, the same crops, the same routine. Anthropologist John Hawks of the University of Wisconsin argues that this is precisely when brain shrinkage accelerated, not because farming people were less intelligent, but because the brutal daily selection pressure that had been driving brain growth for 2 million years suddenly relaxed. The brains that survived were no longer necessarily the sharpest. They were the most compliant, the most cooperative, the most socially agreeable. But here is where the story gets more complicated. Some researchers disagree with the civilization theory entirely. Anthropologist James Steele of University College London points to a different explanation. Body size. Human bodies have also been shrinking since the Holocene, and brain size correlates with body size across almost all mammals. A smaller body tends to come with a smaller brain. If humans got physically smaller after agriculture, which the fossil record suggests they did due to a narrowing of diet, then a smaller brain may simply reflect a smaller body, not a loss of intelligence. The debate is not settled, but both explanations share one uncomfortable implication. The environment shapes the brain, and when the environment changes, the brain changes with it, which brings us to right now, because the environment has never changed faster than it is changing today. Neuroscientist Suzana Herculano-Houzel of Vanderbilt University has spent decades studying what actually makes a brain powerful. Her conclusion is not about size at all. It is about neuron count and connectivity. The human brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons. What matters is not how large the brain is, but how densely those neurons are packed and how richly they are connected to each other. By that measure, the modern human brain may be more efficient than its larger ancestors, doing more with less, like a newer computer chip that is smaller but faster than the ones before it. Or it may not be. The honest answer is that scientists do not yet have the tools to measure intelligence across thousands of years of fossil records. What they do know is this: the brain is not fixed. It is not a static organ that reaches its final form and stays there. It is constantly reshaping itself in response to the demands placed on it. Use it in complex ways and it builds new connections. Leave it idle, and those connections weaken. The brain you have today is not the brain you were born with. It is the brain that your life has built so far. And that is either the most comforting thing about this story or the most alarming. Because if the brain shrinks when civilization removes the pressure to think hard every day, the question becomes, what is your civilization asking of your brain right now? What problems are you solving? What demands are you making of the 3 pounds of tissue that built the entire human world? The brain grew because it had to. The question is whether it still does.